So we will start from the beginning because this online audience is lost at the beginning. And we will start with this first part is the importance of Buddhist path. As we said earlier, Buddhist teachings are guidelines for us to study. And these guidelines, most of these are very philosophical teaching. As yesterday we have discussed, the Four Noble Truths is a philosophy about human life. And as Bhikkhu Bodhi said, this teaching, becomes alive. It's because of the Noble Eightfold Paths. So the Noble Eightfold Paths are really bring us to practice. And this practice is so important that it guides towards the happiness for our life. Therefore, these paths, as the paths that demonstrate to us clearly, the first is very important, is understanding. Understanding of the path, properly understood, then you can follow the path and practice properly. Without the proper understanding, we don't know where shall we start. That's why this right understanding itself is already part of the practice. It's very important. Many of the new beginners started to learn Buddhism. They think that practice is more important. The way you are teaching a lot of Buddhist philosophy and sense, it's not necessary. In fact, that itself is a misunderstanding, because without the proper understanding, you don't know where to go. So the first factor called right understanding is so important in the Buddhist text, saying that they are the forerunner of all the Buddhist practices. It's only when we understand it properly and we know where we should start, and we know that where we should stop. The aim, very important. That's why the understanding comes first. And with this, we know the aim for this practice is emancipation from suffering, end of the suffering. As we said earlier, last lecture, Buddhism starts with the suffering. Purpose is to end up suffering. So that purpose is very clear. So this path, it's called the middle path. Middle path in practice in relation to Indian religions practices. In India, there are so many different kinds of religions born in India. Most of them, we will see, they emphasize on asceticism. They think that asceticism is a way to end suffering. While other religions, they think that, enjoy all the senses. That is the purpose of life. But that kind of religion died out very soon. And those religions emphasizing on the ascetic life still survived, continued, part of the Hinduism, for example, part of this Jainism. And they think that the punishing the body is a very important way for religious practice. In fact, the Buddha, before he got enlightened, he also spent 6 years for such kind of hardship and practices. But finally, he found out that he could not get, end of suffering. That's why he just gave it up. Therefore, in the Buddhist text, usually described this two ways of religious practice, saying that the first one, it's a gratification of the worldly desire, saying it's low, common, and profitable. And the way of the ordinary people. Well, the other one, this leading ascetic life, the Buddhist or the Buddha criticized this as a painful, unworthy, and unprofitable. In other words, both way of practices criticized by the Buddha, saying that unprofitable. That means here, by practicing this, we cannot get rid of human sufferings. That's why the Buddha abandoned this two way of practices and called the Buddhist teaching as the middle path. Although using the word middle path, in fact, the Buddhist teaching called Noble Eightfold Path transcend all the different kind of extreme practices. So these kind of practices, in fact, in India, is still going on. That's why I took this picture from the internet. And when you type sadhu, there will come out a lot of such kind of religious people spend whole their life, in fact, practicing hardships. To Buddhism, saying that you are identified the wrong sources of suffering, which is the body punishing. In fact, the true causes to human suffering is in our mind rather in our physical body. It's wrong. So that's why Buddhism later on the Buddha abandoned these kind of practices. So with this short introduction, then we will discuss the significance of the Noble Eightfold Path. It's very important. And most of religions, as you know, all emphasize on faith. Without faith, basically, you will get nothing. They believe a God there because they don't know whether the God is truly exists or not. That's why it remains a belief. Well, to Buddhism wants us to really come here to know and see it. Just like in this room, you come this room, you learn, you know, and you see. Therefore, in this room, you don't say, I believe there is a lecture. You don't say that. Why? Because you are already in this room, you have seen the lecture, you attend the lecture, and you have seen and you have no belief is not a problem. No need, in fact, because you come here, experience the lecture already. That's why the Buddhist path, you don't fight a faith. Faith is so important to all these kind of religions, but Buddhism is saying that more importantly, come here and see. And you need to know, you need to say it. So that's why all these kind of religions, ideally, not found in the Buddhist path. So the Buddhist path, it's actual practices. That's why I come to the second very important thing. And of course, this is still the first path. The first point is no faith. Second is not even rebirth. Rebirth, of course, a Buddhist belief, but in the Noble Eightfold Path, in this practice, even rebirth never, discussed in this rebirth. Therefore, this practice aiming for deliver and develop wisdom, a very important tool for us to acquire. The second point, very important, is that the Buddhist path of practice is universal. Universal in the way that because Buddhism do not emphasize on the faith, therefore, anybody, if you live and believe in any kind of religion, you still can come here and practice without changing your original faith, original belief. That's why I call this as a universal. Anybody, as long as a human being is there and you can practice this and you can also get the benefit. And even if you do not believe in Buddhism, you still can practice because there's no demand for such kind of a faith. That is a very important, significant, and so much different from all other world religions. The third path is very important in the Buddhist practices, is emphasizing on human effort, human liberation, and the aim is happiness. In other words, according to the Buddhist teaching, this path we need to follow, we need to practice, we need to make effort. In other words, it's only us, we human beings, have the effort and practice and attain this goal. There is no need outside agent or supernatural power to guide us. No need. That's why the Buddha himself is also a teacher only. That's why Buddhism say enlightenment, nobody can help us. Only we, through study, through practice, one day we get enlightened. Nobody can help. That's why it's emphasizing on human effort for liberation. It's important. Exactly what we say is a practice of self-discipline in body, speech, and mind. These are the three things we develop must. Emphasizing we as a human being. So important. That's why we call it self-development, self-purification. In fact, no other body can help us. Just like eating food, just like drinking water, nobody can help you. You must drink. If you don't drink, even those good, drinks, food, if you don't eat, you're still hungry. Emphasizing we as a human being for our own salvation. Very important. Therefore, it's no outside agent is emphasized. Maybe some of you already thinking that we human beings is so tiny when we consider the huge universe. We are powerless. Without somebody help, how can we, help ourselves? In fact, Buddhism saying that this Buddhist practice is a guideline because this Buddhist practice is aiming for a holistic aim. Holistic aim, in other words, we want to remove the roots of human problems. Great hatred, delusion, these are the roots. With these roots, if we removed, then the aim is to develop given vision, knowledge, which lead to calm, insight, enlightenment, and nirvana. Therefore, this aim we can actually get because it does not relate to any kind of outside agent or anything. We as human beings, we can develop these kind of things. That's why here, I just quoted from Rupa Kandin. Rupa Kandin is a professor from Bristol University, and recently he just retired, and this is what he said. In fact, the Dhamma, the Buddhist teaching, is a help, always there. Therefore, although Buddhism emphasizing that we human beings, we need to make effort and we need to do everything, this does not mean that you do not have the help. You do not have anybody to help you. The Dhamma is a help. That's why Rupa Kandin said this. On the contrary, the message is precisely that help is at hand in the form of the Buddha's teaching, the Dhamma. And for those who have followed and are following the path, moreover, from the Buddhist perspective, the sense that one is forever and absolutely on one's own must rest in part on a self-delusion from which one can be eventually released by the Buddha's teachings. With the Buddha's awakening, the doors to the deathless, that means happiness, are once more open for those who have the faith set out on the path. So here means the Buddha's Dhamma is there. Any kind of, when you make effort and how to make effort, and when you study the Dhamma, Dhamma will guide you all through. But still, the making the effort is still we human beings. We need to do this. Although the teaching is only a guide. That's why, because the teaching is a guide, that's why we need to study it. And when we study it, we use this in our practice. That's why one of the Korea Buddhist monk, lived something like 200 years ago, and he practiced the Buddhist meditation. One day he got enlightened. And then he started to give lectures to his disciples, and he pointing all these Buddhist Tipitakas, the teachings, and the books. He is saying that, this is, what is that? That is a tour guide. So that is exactly, what the Buddhist teaching means. Our life is a tour. And the destination is happiness. In order to reach that destination, we need a tour guidebook. And this guidebook is the Dhamma. But still, the tour itself, we need to proceed and go on. For example, you go to Bangkok. You bought a tour guidebook. Reading the tour guidebook is not enough. You need to buy the ticket, fly to Bangkok, fly to the airport, actually practice. So that related to actual practice. That's why the Dhamma serving as a tour guide us. It's because of this we need to understand it. The Buddhist teaching, the path, is both a means as well as an end. So this means that the Buddhist practice always start with morality and end up with moral perfections. When we reach there, which is called nirvana, or what we call happiness, that does not mean that we abandon all kind of moralities, but we become morally perfect persons. That's why here, moral and intellectual perfections in the Buddhist ideas. That's why this path, when we practice, just acquired and become part of our life, in other words. All the eight, guided by right understanding, and then all this. Finally, what we get is right knowledge and right liberation. What this knowledge? This knowledge is knowing about entire human life. Therefore, this knowledge does not relate to any outside agent or God or any supernatural power, but ourself. A very important thing. So this is the second. Fifth one is the Noble Eightfold Path, as you know, it starts with right view. As we said, right view is the first one because we need to understand the path itself. Without understanding the path itself, then we will never, start practicing. And what is this right view? And in the Buddhist text, saying that just as the Tao, the right view is a forerunner of all the Buddhist practices. Therefore, it said, just as the dawn is a forerunner of the first indication of the rising of the sun, so right view is a forerunner and first indication of wholesome states. Here, wholesome states of our mind. So that is the beginning of the moral practices. It's very important. That's why we need to have a right view. If our views, our guidelines are wrong, then we embark on a wrong path. That's why here in the Buddhist text saying that, what is that thing? It says that nothing is more dangerous than the wrong views. In other words, the wrong view leading us to kind of a wrong life, wrong practices, and wrong path. Everything is wrong. That's why we need right view. That's why here the Buddha said, I say no single factor is so responsible for the arising of unwholesome states of the mind as wrong views. And no factors are so helpful for the arising of the wholesome states of the mind as right view. So right view guides our mind, basically. Therefore, the Buddha here saying that there is no single factor so responsible for the suffering of all the living beings as wrong view, and no factor is so potent in promoting the good living of all living beings is right view. In other words, when we have right view, we lead to goodness. We lead to whole state of the mind, and this mind lead us to happiness. When we have the wrong view, lead to the unwholesome state of the mind, then that leads to us to suffering. So here coming back to the mind again. In this mind is a right understanding, a right view. That's why the Buddhist path start with the right view as a guideline for us to practice. Wrong view is more dangerous, very dangerous. That's why here the Buddha said, monks, one person born into the world is born to the loss of the manifold, to the discomfort of the manifold, to the loss, discomfort, and sorrow of devas and mankind. What is that person? One who born with a perverted view, wrong views. So this person, he himself lead a life of suffering, and also because of his view, he will influence many others also leading on the wrong path. Also suffer. In the Buddhist text, they usually identify Mahakara Gosala is one of the, what Buddhism calls the 6 heretics, heretic teachers, one of them. Because this teacher basically denies moralities. Basically saying that even if you do good things for 1,000 years, there is no good result. Even if you killing another human beings, there is nothing bad. That's why this religion died out very soon. So Buddha criticized this as breaking these basic senses, wrong views. Buddhism goes a step further, in fact. Right view is good, but attachment to the right view, even right view, is wrong. So dogmatic attached to any kind of view is wrong. Why? Because views are always guidelines. So this guideline guide us to happiness, to our destination, to nirvana. That is our goal. But if you always attach your own views, then you will never open to other people's, teachings. And because the world is progressing, and our life is progressing, and if you do not open up yourself to listening and other teachings, naturally you are left behind. You will never make progress. And that's why attachment to even right view is wrong, even if you have the right view. That's why Buddhism teaches us is that even right view, we uphold it, but we never attach it as a dogma. We remain always open for all different kind of new things and keep on all learning. That's why the Buddha here said this quite clearly, say, purified and bright as this view is, if you adhere to it, cherish it, and treat it as a possession, would you then understand the Dhamma that has been taught as a similar draft, being for the purpose of crossing over samsara, not for the purpose of grasping? In other words, even the Dhamma is just like a raft, like a boat, means taking us across over the river, and the Dhamma is not the purpose. Our purpose is happiness. Our purpose is a goal. That is nirvana. That's why the Buddha said, we shall not, miscomprehend according to individual views and uphold it tenaciously. You don't want to give up. Because the view, after all, serve only as a guideline for action. That's why Mahayanist Buddhism, perhaps some of you know that, even the Dhamma is empty. What that means? Because it's empty, you shall not attach to it. So that is the exact saying as Buddhism. The Dhamma is like a raft, it's for the crossing over. Dhamma is what kind? It's a tour guidebook. It's an instrument. The purpose is not for that. It's for happiness. That's why the Chinese masters, the Chan masters, saying that there is a book. It's called in Chinese 指月录. That means pointing to the moon. It's just the same simile is saying that in the full moon day, we want to appreciate the full moon so nicely. So one person pointing to you saying that is the moon. But we as ordinary people mistaken saying that looking at the fingers rather than the moon. And he says that the fingers are just the instrument. You're looking from that direction, you will find the moon. So the fingers or the hand similar to as the Dhamma, the teaching. The final purpose is the moon. The moon is our destination, and the moon represents human happiness. So the Chinese master said, exactly same as this. Therefore, Buddhism say, any kind of view, even right view, we will never attach to it. We just use it as a guideline. That's why in the Noble Eightfold Path, although start with the right view, but we do not attach to it. Like other religions, attached as a dogma, you will never change. But Buddhist right view is increasing and gradually changing and improving. So it's very different from other religions. Dogmatics attached to any kind of view, it, becomes a kind of, sense to, so we can never develop ourselves. We can never learn any kind of other things because you just holding up, only my view is right, all others wrong. That's why you don't want to learn anything. So Buddhism teaching us that is something, it's bad. It's vehemently, bad for us to making all kind of progress. So right view leading to right vision. This vision guide us. So this is a very important thing we need to understand. So here are the Noble Eightfold Paths. I think a lot of you know that. So start with the right understanding, right intention. These are in Buddhism called the wisdom. Then the following three, these are the ethical practices. And then the meditation comes to these three. The final aim, what we acquire, is right knowledge and right liberations. So from here you can see Buddhism group this into three. These are the moralities. These are the things what we wanted to practice and improve. That is the most important. Although it's a foundation, but the most important part of our practice, in fact, remember. In fact, without the wisdom, these two parts, all the meditation, all become instrument, all become the method. Through this method, what we want to improve is our moralities. Why? Because right understanding, right intention is a guideline, guide us to have right speech, right action, right livelihood. It's guide for this. In order to have this practiced well, we need to clear up our mind first. In order to train the mind, you use right effort. Right mindfulness, in fact, is the heart of Buddhist meditation. And this heart of Buddhist meditation is exactly going back to our mind, training of the mind. Right, of non-meditation, the right concentration, I typed it wrong. Here should be right concentration. Concentration means the degree of this, one-pointedness, in fact. So these are the 8. From these 8, that's why I said at the beginning, the Buddhist path for practice, there's no faith. Religion's idea is totally absent. No faith, no ritual, no all different kind of religious elements. But a very practical guide. The heart of this, although most of us, we were saying wisdom is important, meditation is important, but in fact, the most important thing is morality, because these two parts is helping us start from morality, get morality to be perfect, remember. That's why morality, as I said earlier, is the foundation, and make this foundation stronger and stronger, later on become perfect. We start with the right view. Right view is very important, as we said earlier already. Then the Buddha saying that, what is right view? There are so many descriptions. Then the Buddha said, knowing, wrong view is wrong view, right view is right view, is a right view. What that means? Somebody's idea is right, somebody's idea is wrong. That is very important. In other words, you can recognize what is right view, what is wrong view. This is already a right view. That's very important. Right view here, of course, related to our mind. That's why here is saying that it's a starting point. The text says this quite clearly, saying, for one of the right view, one person, right intention originate. When you have the right view, right intention comes up. For one of the right intention, right speech comes up. For one of the right speech, then right action comes up. For one of the right action, right livelihood comes up. For one of the right livelihood, right effort comes up. One of the right effort, right mindfulness comes up. For one of the right mindfulness, right concentration comes up, then leading to right knowledge and right liberation. In other words, right view, you can say, is a beginning. It progressively comes up, gradually leading to liberation. Liberation from suffering. Liberation from emotionally, sufferings. That's why here it says that in this way, in dependence on the right cause, there is a success, no failure. Then the text, in fact, continued. For one of the wrong views, wrong intention comes up, through all are wrong. Wrong knowledge, wrong liberations. Everything is wrong. Therefore, here, demonstrate quite clearly the Buddhist path of practice must start with the right view or right understanding. That's why many of the Buddhists started from the very beginning. They think that study the Dhamma is not important. What is important is practice. In fact, that is a misunderstanding. We need to first understand Dhamma, then practice. Without understanding the Dhamma correctly, you just gone to the wrong path. You don't know. That's why the right view is a very important thing. So this right view serves as a basis for all our living moral lives. Because this right view guides our moral life. As I said earlier, moral life is the most important thing we need to practice. In order to practice a correct moral life, right view is a guideline. Therefore, this right view then comes back again is that basically right view including a lot of things to be understood. But the heart of this is Four Noble Truths. In other words, right view coming back is a correct understanding of the Four Noble Truths. Why? Why is coming back to correct understanding of the Four Noble Truths? It's because the Four Noble Truths, as I said in the last lecture, yesterday's lecture, Four Noble Truths are the Buddhist philosophy about human life. Therefore, right understanding of the Four Noble Truths means right understanding of our life. Because that is entirely analysis of the human suffering in order to, fight the causes of the human sufferings. That's why it's coming back to the Four Noble Truths again. So you can say from here is that Four Noble Truths include the Noble Eightfold Path. Noble Eightfold Path, when it discuss right understanding, again coming back to the Noble Eightfold, to the Four Noble Truths. So these two are mutually including each other, mutually linked together. Because the Four Noble Truths is the heart of the Buddhist teaching, and the teaching is human life. That's why the right view, the first thing and most important thing is understand the Four Noble Truths. With this understanding of the Four Noble Truths, your aim is very clear. The aim is happiness. Aim is nirvana, very clear. Since the aim is clear, then you can make an effort towards that aim. Therefore, you will sit down to analyze the suffering, fighting the causes, and making effort. If your aim is not clear, then in the morning you get up, you don't know what to do. You waste a lot of the time. If every day you have a correct, understanding of the aim of our life, then every morning, once when you get up, you know what to do. Because everything leading to that goal, leading to that final goal. For example, all these scientists, they want to make an experiment. That experiment is so important for them to make a contribution to a scientific life. Therefore, every morning when they started to drink a tea, immediately scientists started to think about his experiment. He will never waste 1 second because his aim is very clear. That's why coming back to the Four Noble Truths is that our aim are very clear. Happiness. And why we are, suffering? because there are so many causes leading to suffering. Therefore, you will start to work to fight the causes. That's why it's coming to the Four Noble Truths, giving us a very clear guideline. We know that in our life, there are so many people, in fact, they lead a life without a goal. That's why they are in modern China called 躺平. You just lying there doing nothing because they don't have a goal in life. When you do not have a goal in life, that means your life is meaningless. When somebody leading a meaningless life, what do you think? That means suffering, not happy. For a person to lead a happy life, you must find meaning in life. When your life is meaningful, naturally, you will feel happy. That's why we need to find a meaning in our life. This meaning in our life is not given by the Buddha, not given by the God, not given by your parents or anybody. It's you yourself find the meaning in life. In order to find the meaning, we need to make effort. So the Buddha gave us a guideline. In other words, the happiness is our goal, and the whole of our life is aiming for that thing. That's why our life becomes meaningful. Every day when we get up, we are working towards our goal. Every day we are a step closer to our goal. That's why the Four Noble Truths serve as a very important guidelines. So these Four Noble Truths, it's coming back to the Noble Eightfold Path, the right view. These are the texts. Said this quite clearly. I just read to you. Buddha said that no single factor is so responsible for the arising of unwholesome state of the mind as the wrong view, and no factors so helpful for the arising of the wholesome state of the mind as right view. Then the Buddha continues saying that there is no single factor so responsible for the suffering of the all living beings. There's wrong view. There's no factors so potent to promote good for the living beings. Right view. Here he emphasizes right view. So the right view for a person who has the right view, then he will lead to well-being and happiness. In other words, a person who has the right view, all his conduct, speaking, bodily action, everything is good. Now, that's why the text. For one person of the right view, whatever bodily karma, verbal karma, mental karma he instigate and undertake in accordance with that view, with the right view, and whatever his volition, yearning, inclination, volitional activities, all lead to what is wistful, desired, agreeable, well-being, and happiness. For one reason, because the view is good. That is so important. That's why studying Buddhism must start with the right understanding of the teachings. It's a key to our success. In the Buddhist teachings, usually when they discuss right view, there are two levels. We usually say two kinds of right views. One kind of right view, we usually name this as the mandate right view concerning our daily life. Basically, it's morality. When you understand what is right, what is wrong, what is true, what is false, basically moralities, then that is right view. For example, following the 5 precepts is good. That is a right view. If you take a life, harming another person, that is bad. That is a right view. That's why the mandate right view basically is about morality, understanding the moral life correctly so that we can embark on a correct moral life. So this moral life is regulated, guided by the law of dependent arising. Therefore, we need to understand the dependent arising. Second, we call the supermandate right view. Here, supermandate right view means that coming back again to Four Noble Truths, we have a clear goal. Everything we do is aiming for that goal. And that goal transcends this world. That's why it's called supermandate right view. Detailed here we can discuss is that this mandate view basically is an understanding of the law of karma. Understanding of the law of karma, basically understanding morality. Basically understanding is that when we perform good deeds, naturally there will be good consequences. When we perform bad actions, naturally there will be bad consequences. So that is the Buddhist idea of morality. Therefore, here the mandate view basically is understanding moral life so that we can embark on a correct moral life, gradually cultivate. That is the starting point. So the final point is to have a moral perfection. That's why here the Sutta says this quite clearly, saying that when a noble disciple understands what is karmically unwholesome, the roots, remember, of the unwholesome karma, what is karmically wholesome, and the roots also wholesome karmas. And then he has the right view. So understand the karma and also roots of good or bad karmas. So this in the Buddhist text clearly told us these are the unwholesome karmas, or these are the unwholesome karma, these are the wholesome karmas. So they are turned together. I think a lot of you learn this. It's easy to understand. Buddhism saying that not only you understand this, the wholesome, unwholesome, morally good, morally bad sense, but you need to go a little bit further, understanding the roots to these kind of things. Therefore, the roots. Wholesome, the root is what? Non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion. And the unwholesome, what is their root? Greed, hatred, and delusions. So here come back to the very roots of the problems. That's why at the beginning, as I said, that Buddhism asks us to know it and say it. Not only a belief only a beginning. So here you know that's unwholesome and wholesome. You even know the roots of wholesome and wholesome. And when you see it, means that you experience it. So these are the very important things because these are the basic guidelines for our human life. It is this we need to cultivate. It is this moral life. Gradually, through cultivation, we want to make this perfect. That is what we emphasized in Buddhism, and that's what we should practice. So the second right view, superior right view, or supermandate right view is, again, coming back, as I said earlier, Four Truths. Why is the Four Truths? Because the Four Truths, as I said earlier, goal is very clear. The mandate truth, you are progressing, doing good things, but you do not have a clear goal. That's why, for example, most of the religions, in fact, they emphasize on moral life. Western religion also emphasizes on moral life. Indian a lot of religions emphasize on moral life. Ahimsa, for example, non-killing, non-violence, emphasize this. This is good. That's why Buddhism is saying that they are good. Emphasizing moral life is good as a guideline. But you need to do a step further. Further is that practicing moral life is not for the practice of moral life itself, for a higher purpose. That higher purpose is to leading us to happiness, the final goal. So that we need these superior views. Because understanding the goal, that goal tied together with our life. In other words, our practices is not simply as a good living in the society, but our practices of moral life with a very clear goal to reach. That's why the Four Truths here comes to in and saying that goal is happiness, that goal is nirvana, and giving you a clear description about the goal. That's why every day comes up and you go on that and to work for that. That's why it's coming back to the Noble Eightfold Path, as we said earlier. That is a guideline for human life, And through that guideline, we have a clear purpose, and we know what to do right here and right now. And from here, we just gradually working towards that goal. The goal is clear. What we should practice, all are clear. That's why the Buddha didn't criticize other religions as bad, but he says that other religions are not perfect. They are teaching morality, that is good, but their goal is not clear. They do not have a kind of all these kind of teachings guiding them for their goal. Their goal is cultivation, so that we end of our suffering when we speak in another way. That's why the superior view here serves a very important thing. That's why this superior view means that view according to the truth. Truth is that we have problem. In our life, everything is uncertain, as I said earlier. Only certain thing is that everything is uncertain. That is certain. That means everything is changing. Only thing is certain is that all the things are changing. Since changing, uncertain, it brings us to a kind of, uneasy and problem. That is the truth. So this truth means that uncertainty is always there. The Buddha, when he lived 2,500 years ago, facing the same kind of problem. And today, in a modern society, and our technology advanced so much that, the Buddha's time never thought of these kind of things. But still today, we are facing the same kind of emotional problems as the Buddha. That's why, although Buddhism is a religion, it's so old that a lot of people think that Buddhism is not fit for the modern people. But that is a misunderstanding. Why? Because we are facing the same emotional problems as the Buddha's time's people. Exactly. In fact, our emotional problem is much more than the Buddha's time. Why? Because in the Buddha's time, people live a simple life. Therefore, although they have some emotional problems, but not so strong. We live in a very complex, competitive life. Life's pressure is so much. That's why the more developed countries like Singapore, more developed regions like Hong Kong, Korea, the people more suffer. Mainland China developing so fast. One of the very important, or you can say, bad side effect is that a lot of people get depression. When you see 40 years ago, in mainland China, nobody get depression. Maybe just a few people when they were so poor. But now they are rich, so rich, but they have a huge problem, is depression. Depression is an emotional problem we are facing. That's why the human problem still same as the Buddha's time. That's why Buddhism is still useful. That's why today Western modern psychologists, neuroscience, all coming back here to learn from Buddhism. Maybe a lot of you know this. Western psychologists, they say that they have the second wave of development and the third wave of development. Maybe some of you know. The third wave of development in modern Western psychology is that they incorporate all this Buddhist element of mindfulness and moral living all integrated in it. Because they recognize that the value of Buddhist practice to improve human life is so much. The modern psychologists, the Western psychologists, in fact, they are still developing. So this superior view gives a very important thing, it's a guideline. And it's clear, the goal is clear. That's why here, it's said here very clearly, when you have a clear goal, then you will make the effort. It says that one makes an effort to abandon the wrong view and to enter upon the right view. This is called right effort, because you are making effort to abandon wrong view. Mindfully, one abandons wrong view, and mindfully one enters upon and abiding right view. So this is called right mindfulness. This text going on, thus, these three states, that means right view, right mindfulness, and right effort, these three run and circle around right view. That is right view, right effort, and right mindfulness. So these three are the things very important. In other words, the noble eightfold path, whatever you practice, all these three comes up. In fact, it's not only practicing Buddhism. Any kind of job, any kind of thing in our life, when you wanted to do it and make it successful, you need these three, any kind of thing. For example, you are a lawyer. And when you want to make a successful career, become a successful lawyer, you need to have a right understanding of the law. Without right understanding, you can't be a lawyer. Then, second is that you need to make effort to study the law, to carry out the law. Without making effort, just as a knowledge, not enough. That's why the right effort comes as second. Then the third, you need to do all this mindfully. When you come to the court and you are as a lawyer fighting a case, you need to mindfully doing the job. If you do not mindful, you make a fatal mistake, everything is gone. When you say something, one word wrong, the entire cause is lost. That's why these three, no matter whatever we do in our life, all we need. Buddhism make it very clear, saying that right view, right effort, right mindfulness, whatever you do, all these three are very, very important. We need to do it. That is guided by what? Superior views. The goal is very clear. As I said earlier, this lawyer. Since you are a lawyer, you want to win the case. That is your goal. You need to have a clear understanding of the goal. All this, that's why there's three. When we practice Buddhism, in fact, practice any kind of thing, you need these three circling. That's why the right view, right effort, right mindfulness are the foundation of Buddhist practice. And we need to use this to embark on Buddhist practices. All other kind of, as I said earlier, the moral life is so important. Therefore, when we practice moral life, we need these three: right view, right effort, and right mindfulness. Three of them working together. So, in other words, practicing the Noble Eightfold Path is not one by one, but practicing all together. When you practice all together, then you're working towards a goal. Second is right intention. Right intention here usually is that when you have a clear view under it, you make a commitment. You commit to that kind of practices. A lawyer, for example, you have a clear understanding of the law, the goal, and everything. You need to make a commitment. You make a commitment so that you can, make your effort and doing that. Therefore, it's a purported and volitional aspect. Purported. You have a clear purpose, clear volition, and you want to do it. That is very important. That's why here, including these three, it's including a moral life, in fact. Intention of renunciation. Renounce means renounces self-centered desires. Second is intention of goodwill. Third is intention of harmlessness. Enter into a state of harmlessness. Very important. So we will start with, So this right intention here we can say must be guided with the right view. And because of this, so you make effort and commit yourself, and the goal is clear, so you work for that. Therefore, because of this commitment, therefore, you work for the happiness, not only for yourself, but also for all the human beings. Starting with your family, and starting with your loved ones, and and working together. That's why we need a kind of goodwill and compassion to proceed and to work for it. That's why here we first is come to the intention of renunciation. So intention of renunciation means that we renouncing all different kind of mental attachment. We renounce all different kind of wrong idea, wrong thought, and immoral ideas. All these kind of things, we need to understand it, and we need to change and to abandon it. It's very important to abandon all these mental, unwholesome ideas. In order to do that, what we need to do is we need to have wise attention or wise consideration. In the Pali, it's called Yoniso Manasikara. So in the Chinese translation, Xuan Zhuang, the great master, he translated this word as Ru Li Zhuo Yi. So that means that when you think over something, you need to think it rationally, critically, so that you can find the causes to human sufferings. So here is that Yoniso here means that to the roots, to the sources. Manas here means the mind. Kara means arising, doing. That means you make the mind to think in such a way that tracing all its human problem to its source, to its origin. So that is a very important way of thinking. It's through this way of thinking, it's coming back to the intention. Your intention will focus on tracing the human problem and its sources to its roots. That's why earlier saying that the root is what? Craving, hatred, delusions. Since the Buddha already told us, but we need to still thinking in that way, according to the Buddhist teachings as a guideline to think in that way. That's why here I usually translate this as a rational thinking, or you can say a critical thinking. That is what in the universities, inside all over the world, in universities, they teach in critical thinking. Because the critical thinking is so important in our life so that we can think everything rationally, clearly, so that we can make a good decision or informed decisions. That's why here means your intention wanted to renounce the bad things and let the good things grow. First, you need to critically examine this. What is good? What is bad? That's why the wise consideration comes into being. Very important. Second is the intention of goodwill. That means we need to cultivate this intention. Cultivate a kind of intention is that in Pali word usually say metta. Usually we translate this as loving kindness, and we need to follow this loving kindness not only towards ourselves but towards all sentient beings. So Buddhism usually says that you not only learn this as a technique, but you need to meditate it. Bhavana here means meditation. You meditate on the loving kindness so that loving kindness become part of you, part of your everyday daily thinkings. So that is the second goodwill. Third is the intention of harmlessness. So this intention of harmlessness basically guided by compassion. Because when we look at somebody who is suffering, and out of compassion, we want to help. We want to help this. That's why here we can say is that right intention, including moral thinkings, and including the moral lives. Thinking in the right way about our moral life. So this right way of moral life, when we think it, so we can implement in our life and practice. That's why it's included in this three. Next is moral life. That is a main part of the Buddhist practice, in fact. And this is a beginning, and also gradually make this as a perfect thing. So this include right speech, right action, right livelihood. So this we can discuss together. And when these three practiced, so these three should be practiced with what? With right view, right intention, coupled together with right effort and right mindfulness. Just like we start just like right speech. When you want to practice right speech, first you need to understand what is right speech, what is wrong speech. Therefore, you need right view. After you understand it, then you need to make effort in your daily life to practice right efforts. That's why the right efforts comes into being. While you are practicing it, you need to mindfully always speak the right words in the right place, in the right time. That's why right mindfulness also comes in. That's why practicing the moral life, you need right view, right effort, and right mindfulness. Guided to this. That's why it's all together. You have a clear goal, you are making effort, doing all these kind of things. That's why the moral life is what we... That's why Buddhism first is started with what? With abstinence. Refrain from all kind of bad things. That's why we start with the 5 precepts. 5 precepts is refrain from harming life, refrain from stealing, refrain from illegal sex, refrain from lying. It is from the refrain, then you can go on to the second level of practice is that not only refrain from harming life, but you need to protect life, protect the property, protect the family, protect the community life. So that is the second part. That's why it starts from abstinence and start from refraining and then further goes on. So refraining or abstinence serve as a foundation for our practice. You first not to do the bad things. That's why it comes here with this verse. It says that to abstain from all evil, that is our first practice. Second is cultivate all the good things. That is the second part. And the purpose is for what? To purify our mind. So that is a final purpose. And this final purpose can be reached only when we practice in the first two. That's why here the verse is saying that this is a teaching of the Buddhas. So you can say, here is a plural. Plural means that this is not only Sakyamuni's teaching, but the past Buddhas, future Buddhas, there are all so many enlightened beings, they will teach you the same kind of things. Because this is the foundation of human happiness. Without this foundation, refrain from all these bad things, we don't have the foundation. And with this foundation, then when our mind is cleared, purified mind. What is a purified mind? So a purified mind, according to Buddhism, is free from greediness or craving, free from hatred, free from delusion. When a mind is free from these 3 factors, that is called the purified mind. That purified mind, in fact, is what we want. That's why moral practice is the very important. I will just here go a little bit faster because it's easy to understand. Right speech, so you just abstain from what? False speech, slanderous speech, harsh speech, and idle speech, all this. You cultivate what? My truthfulness, cultivate harmonious speech, cultivate gentle speech, cultivate kind of purposeful speech. That's why in the Buddhist text saying that very interestingly, the Buddhist text saying that the Buddha said, when a person has been taken birth, an egg is also born inside his mouth, with which the fool cuts himself by uttering the wrong speech. That means when we born in this world, if we have a deluded mind, when we are full of deluded mind, we say the wrong things, all this wrong things. Saying the wrong things, that means that not only hurt ourselves, also hurt others. That's why our speech should be guided, should be trained according to the Buddhist teaching, guided by right view, right intention. The third is right action. Right action basically is about other bodily actions. Our bodily action basically refrain from taking life or harming life, refrain from taking what is not given, refrain from sexual misconduct. So these are the refraining things. Refrain from this, then Buddhism saying that there are also positive things. Positive things is that we should have full of compassion to all sentient beings. That's the second part. Then one should protect the private and public properties, and one should practice this, protect the family life, married life. Yeah. Without these kind of practices, then you can't build these basic foundations. So since the time's already 11:30, so we will have a short break. After a short break, we continue.